LWO1 WeatherNet. Liftoff conditions looking pretty good.
ESPS is ready for launch.
Ignition. Liftoff.
Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Ten, 9, 8,
Side booster ignition.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. It's Saturday, November 13th, and you're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 as it awaits its 7:19 a.m. Eastern Time launch from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. My name is Yomei Zhou, and I'm a propulsion engineer here at SpaceX, joining you from our headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Thank you for joining us for our 15th Starlink launch of the year and SpaceX's 23rd mission of 2021. Starlink is a satellite internet constellation designed and manufactured by SpaceX that can provide high-speed, low-latency internet to people living in remote and rural locations around the globe. This launch will send 53 Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit, which brings us one step closer to near global coverage of the populated world in 2021. It's been an exciting week here at SpaceX with the return of NASA's Crew 2 astronauts on Monday, followed on Wednesday by the launch of Crew 3, who just docked with the space station less than about 36 hours ago. And we'll talk more about that later in the broadcast. The latest weather forecast shows 90% favorable for liftoff. The vehicle, satellites, weather, and range are all looking good for an on-time liftoff just a few minutes from now. Now, Falcon 9 stands 70 meters tall and is a two-stage rocket designed and manufactured by SpaceX for the reliable and safe transport of people and payloads into Earth orbit and beyond. For all of you Star Wars fans, this fun fact is for you. Our Falcon 9 rocket is named after what some would say is the fastest ship in the galaxy, aka the Millennium Falcon, and the number 9 indicates the number of Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. The bottom two-thirds of the vehicle is the first stage, and you may be able to just make out the soot markings left over from its previous 8 flights. The booster you see on your screen has previously supported NASA's Crew Demo 2, Anasis 11, CRS 21, Transporter 1, and 4 previous Starlink missions. The first stage accelerates the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere into space with the help of 9 Merlin engines at the base of the rocket. We will be attempting to recover the first stage on our drone ship, Just Read the Instructions, which for reference is about the size of a football field, and if successful, it will mark the 87th recovery of a Falcon 9 first stage. On top of the first stage is the black carbon fiber inner stage, and on top of that is the Falcon 9 second stage, which has a single Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine. Now, once the first and second stages separate at about 2.5 minutes in the mission, the MVAC engine will ignite and carry the Starlink satellites to a low Earth orbit around the Earth. The stack of satellites is safely enclosed inside the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which you can see on your screen there, which is that pointed cone at the very top of the rocket. Now, this payload fairing protects the payload from aerothermal loads, heating, and contamination during ascent. Once we reach the vacuum of space, we will jettison the fairing halves as the second stage continues on its journey to orbit. And just as we reuse Falcon 9, we do recover and reuse our fairing halves as well. The fairing halves we're using today are flight proven, so one half supported the GPS 3-4 mission and a Starlink mission, and the other half has previously supported a different Starlink mission. We will be attempting to recover these halves again using our recovery vessel, Finn. Propellants have been loading on the vehicle since T-minus 35 minutes. Falcon 9 is a bipropellant vehicle, which means it uses 2 propellants, a fuel and an oxidizer. An oxidizer is a type of chemical that a fuel requires in order to burn. So most burning on Earth uses oxygen, which is readily available in Earth's atmosphere. But in space, there's no atmosphere to provide oxygen or any other oxidizers, so rockets need to carry up their own. For Falcon 9, our fuel is a refined form of kerosene known as RP1, and our oxidizer is a super chilled liquid oxygen called LOX. The liquid oxygen is chilled well below its boiling point, so it becomes what we call densified, which means that it has a much greater amount of mass per volume and means we can load more of it into the booster. In addition to its propellants, Falcon 9 also needs an ignition source in order to go, and for that we use the chemical TTEB, or triethyl aluminum and triethyl borane. When it's fully fueled, Falcon 9 holds just over 1 million pounds of propellant that the vehicle will burn through in less than 3 minutes after liftoff. Currently, fuel is fully loaded on both Stage 1 and Stage 2, and liquid oxygen is about 90% on Stage 1 and about halfway on Stage 2. Once all the tanks are full, both stages will continue to be topped off with propellant until T-minus 2 minutes to keep temperatures as cold as possible. The latest weather forecast is showing about 90% favorable for liftoff. The vehicle, satellites, weather, and range continue to look good for an on-time liftoff just a few minutes from now. As I mentioned earlier, it's been an exciting week for us here at SpaceX. On Monday, November 8th at 10:33 p.m. Eastern Time, we welcomed Crew 2 astronauts Shane Kimbrough, Megan MacArthur, Akihiko Hoshide, and Thomas Pesquet back to Earth after their record-setting 199-day mission in space, surpassing the previous record of 168 days set by the Crew 1 astronauts. The Crew 2 mission successfully flew 2 international partners and sent a flight-proven Dragon and Falcon 9 to space for the first time for NASA's Commercial Crew program. Less than 47 hours after Crew 2 splashed down off the coast of Pensacola, SpaceX and NASA launched Dragon's third long-duration operational crew mission, Crew 3, to the International Space Station from historic Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Falcon 9 lifted off at 9:03 p.m. Eastern Time Wednesday evening with NASA astronauts Roger Chari, Tom Marshburn, Kayla Barron, and European Space Agency astronaut Matthias Maurer on board. This mission marks SpaceX's third human spaceflight this year and 5th to date. Following stage separation, Falcon 9's first stage landed on a shortfall of Gravitas drone ship off the coast of Florida. And meanwhile, Dragon and the crew continued on their 21.5-hour journey in space, docking with the floating laboratory of the International Space Station at 6:33 p.m. Eastern Time Thursday evening. At 8:25 p.m. Eastern Time, the hatch opened, and Crew 3 astronauts were welcomed aboard the space station, commencing their 6-month mission. SpaceX has now flown 18 humans to space in the past 18 months, and in just a few minutes, we're looking to round out what's been an awesome week for spaceflight with our 23rd mission of 2021. We are currently just about T-minus 5 minutes from liftoff of our 15th Starlink mission, and Falcon 9 is progressing into the final stages of the launch countdown. Next up, the truss structure next to the vehicle, known as the transporter erector, or TE, will start to retract. And in preparation for retraction, the TE clamps will begin to open, and then the transporter erector will begin to pull away from the rocket slightly. Then at T-minus 0, hydraulics pull the transporter erector even further away from the Falcon 9 as it lifts off. Now, you can't quite make out the clamps there, but they are right below that Falcon payload fairing, and they should be starting to open.
Strong back retract has started.
The transporter erector is the structure that provides liquids, gases, electrical connections to the second stage, as well as air conditioning to the payload fairing. At this point in the countdown, both the first and second stages are nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen, or LOX. And those white clouds that you see around Falcon 9 are created when our propellant oxidizer, and that super chilled liquid oxygen, comes in contact with the warm, humid air in Florida. At this point in the countdown, both the first and second stages are nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen, or LOX. And those white clouds that you see around Falcon 9 are created when our propellant oxidizer, and that super chilled liquid oxygen, comes in contact with the warm, humid air in Florida. Both the first and second stages should finish loading propellant about a minute apart from one another, with the first stage finishing up at about T-minus 3 minutes here in about 30 seconds. And then the second stage should finish at about T-minus 2 minutes, which is about a minute after that. At T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 will be in startup, and this means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers will have taken over the launch countdown, and just inside of T-minus 2 seconds, we light the Merlin 1D engines and we're set
Stage
for
1
liftoff.
LOX load has closed out.
You heard the call out that we did just finish the Stage 1 LOX load. And again, Stage 2 will be finishing up in just about a minute.
Final Pogo bleed verification.
The Starlink payload continues to be healthy, and the Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather is still looking favorable, and the range is green for launch. Here at just about T-minus 2 minutes and 36 seconds, let's listen in to the terminal countdown. Here in just about 10 seconds, the second stage LOX loading should be completing. Looks like a beautiful early morning in Florida.
Stage 2 LOX load has closed out.
Stage 2 LOX loading is now complete. We are fully loaded with propellant on our Falcon 9 first and second stages. And you may have seen those little puffs of white clouds venting from our transporter erector LOX line. This is expected and normal. Again, at T-minus 1 minute here, coming up in 30 seconds, Falcon 9 will be in startup. This means that Falcon 9's internal flight computers will take over the countdown, and our first and second stages will begin pressurizing for launch.
Gas closeouts has started.
A few seconds after that, you will hear the launch director give our final go for launch, and then we'll be set for liftoff.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup. Our first and second stages are pressurizing for launch.
Go for launch.
Our launch director has given that final go for launch. All systems are go. Let's listen in to the terminal count and watch as Falcon 9 takes our 53 Starlink satellites into orbit.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. Vehicle is shifting downrange.
Power range telemetry nominal.
What beautiful views from Falcon 9 first as it lifts off from Cape Canaveral Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space
Falcon is
Force
supersonic.
Station. We are carrying our 53 Starlink satellites to orbit. Moments ago, we throttled our engines down in preparation for max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure, which we should be passing through in just a few moments.
XQ.
We did just pass through max Q, and we will have 3 events happening in quick succession in just a few minutes, which first we will have main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation, and second engine startup 1. So first main engine cutoff, or MECO, is where all 9 of the Merlin 1D engines that you can currently see firing will shut off to slow the vehicle down in preparation for stage separation. And this is where the first and second stages will separate, with the first stage starting to make its way back down to Earth for landing, while second stage continues on its journey to this third event, which is second engine startup 1. And this is where the single MVAC engine on the second stage will light up, and this propels the MVAC, propels the second stage along with our Starlink satellites to their targeted orbit. We're about 30 seconds from main engine cutoff here. You'll want to watch for main engine cutoff, stage separation, and SES-1. They'll happen just a few seconds apart from one another. We will also have our fairing deployment from our second stage very shortly after those 3 events, and we should hopefully get some cool live views from our second stage. You can see the Falcon 9 first stage going through the mist there.
Stage separation confirmed.
We did have main engine cutoff and stage separation. You can see second engine startup. We did have MVAC ignition, that is second engine startup. On those live views from the second stage on your right, you can see the first stages for...
Fairing separation confirmed.
Fairing has also separated on our second stage. You can see our 53 Starlink satellites there. And there on your left, the first stages, 4 hypersonic Griffins have deployed. And again, we did have that successful fairing separation, and fairing, SpaceX has now reflown Falcon fairing halves since November of 2019. And again, this was our 3rd flight for one of those fairing halves and 2nd flight for the other half. We'll be attempting to recover those fairing halves again today using our recovery vessel Finn. The stage 2 is heading towards its targeted drop-off orbit for our Starlink satellites, and stage 1 will execute 2 burns in order to make its way back down to Earth. The first is the entry burn, where 3 of the M1D engines
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
Reignite, and this helps slow the stage down as it re-enters the upper part of the Earth's atmosphere. The second burn is the landing burn, and this is a single engine burn that brings the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to land on the drone ship. You can see those beautiful views from the first and second stages. Those little puffs of white gas you see on the first stage are nitrogen gas from our attitude control system. And the second stage MVAC engine is continuing its burn, carrying our 53 Starlink satellites. If you're just catching up with us, we had a successful launch of Falcon 9 from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, Slick 40, and you're looking at live views of Falcon 9's first and second stages, as second stage is on its way to deliver our Starlink payload to orbit, and stage 1 is making its way back to our drone ship. Just read the instructions in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, the Merlins on the first stage.
Both vehicles are following nominal trajectories.
Both vehicles are on nominal trajectories, as you just heard. And again, the 9 Merlins on the first stage are optimized for sea level. So this means they achieve 190,000 pounds of thrust during ascent and descent. And the MVAC engine on the second stage, by contrast, is optimized for vacuum. And it produces 220,500 pounds of thrust in vacuum. You can see the first stage live views of the hypersonic grid fins, and they are positioned near the top of the first stage. And they're used for steering as the first stage makes its way back down to Earth. And again, these grid fins, you can see them moving around. They do help to orient the rocket during re-entry and guide the rocket during descent. Falcon 9 first stage is also equipped with 4 landing legs made of state-of-the-art carbon fiber with aluminum honeycomb, and they are placed symmetrically around the base of the rocket, and they'll deploy just prior to landing. In just about 20 seconds here, we'll be coming up on our stage 1 entry burn. And this is a 3-engine burn meant to slow the first stage down as it hits the thicker parts of the Earth's atmosphere. It'll be about a 20-second burn.
Stage 1 FTS is safe.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
We did have the start of our stage 1 entry burn. You can see on those live views, that's a 3-engine burn of the Falcon 9 first stage.
Both vehicles are following nominal trajectories.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
We did have a successful stage 1 entry burn. And stage 2 is continuing to look good with our Starlink payload. For those of you who follow along, you'll know about the soot on the rocket indicates that it's been flown before, and here's a quick explanation of how that soot forms. So the rocket-grade kerosene, or RP1, used to fuel a Falcon 9 is carbon-based. So when this fuel burns, it generates soot. Now, as the booster approaches the landing site during descent and does its long re-entry burn, which it just did, to slow down prior to re-entering the atmosphere, the rocket will actually fly through its own plume, which deposits the soot onto the rocket. And if you watch the feed from the onboard cameras during landing, you can see that soot sticking on the lens. So we will have 3 events coming up here in quick succession. The stage 1 landing burn, which will be starting here shortly and last about 20 seconds.
Vehicle is in terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing burn startup.
Here's the stage 1 landing burn. Can maybe just make out that drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean there. What a cool view.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
Stage 2 FTS is safe.
We did get confirmation that stage 2 flight termination system has saved, and we should have second engine cutoff here very shortly.
Tico 1.
We did have second engine cutoff here, and we are waiting on confirmation of a good orbit from our second stage. We did have a good burn and a good orbit. We are still waiting for confirmation of our first stage landing, but we will see if we can't get some information on that. But we do have a successful orbit and second engine cutoff for our second stage. And we did just get confirmation of our stage 1 landing.
Acquisition of signal, Newfoundland.
This is the 87th overall successful recovery of our Falcon 9 first stage. And next up will be payload deployment at about T plus 15 minutes and a half, 15 and a half minutes. So while we coast for the next 6 minutes or so, sit back and enjoy the tunes, and we'll see you soon.
loss of signal, Bermuda.
there, 25th century AD. We sat there and looked at a rocket from Mars, and you just boggled the mind. And the technology caught up, didn't it?
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, a quick recap of today's mission. We had a successful liftoff from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station at 7:19 a.m. Eastern Time. We then had successful stage separation, recovered our first stage after its 9th flight on our drone ship, Just Read the Instructions, and had a successful second stage MVAC engine burn. We are now waiting on the deployment of our Starlink satellites. That should be happening in just about 30 seconds here. Hopefully we continue to get good ground station coverage and get signals from our payload and can continue to see these great live views of that payload there. And we have 53 Starlink satellites on today's mission. What a beautiful view from our second stage. Again, Starlink is a satellite internet constellation designed and
Starlink deploy confirmed.
You can see we did have successful deployment of our Starlink satellites here. And again, Starlink is a satellite internet constellation designed and manufactured by SpaceX that can provide high-speed, low-latency internet to people living in remote and rural locations all around the globe. You can see our 53 Starlink satellites floating away from the second stage there with the beautiful backdrop of the Earth in the background. And with that, the addition of these satellites, we've launched nearly 2,000 Starlinks to orbit to date. And with that, that brings today's webcast to a close. Thank you to the Range and Federal Aviation Administration for supporting today's mission. And of course, thank you to all of our viewers and all of our Starlink customers who are using our service at this time. If you're interested in signing up for Starlink service, head over to starlink.com. As always, thanks for watching and see you next time.
Expected loss of signal, Newfoundland.